Two beggar twin girls call a billionaire daddy in front of his family at an upscale restaurant. When he discovers the truth, he's shocked and bursts into tears. The Le Chateau restaurant buzzed with the soft clinking of crystal glasses and the elegant hum of conversation. Amber lights danced across the marble walls, creating a sophisticated atmosphere. Michael Almeida leaned back in the leather chair, admiring the gleam of his Rolex as he raised a glass of red wine. "To our 5-year anniversary," he said, smiling at Emily, his wife. Her eyes sparkled as they met his, and little James, only 4, played with the silverware, oblivious to the importance of the moment. "To many more years," Emily replied, gently tapping her glass against his with a light chime. Michael observed his family with satisfaction. Everything was perfect. The exclusive restaurant, the hard-to-get reservation, the attentive waiter. Everything reflected the success he had achieved. He didn't need to say a word. The setting spoke for him. Emily delicately cut her lobster into smaller pieces for James. "We deserve to celebrate," she commented, helping her son hold his fork properly. "Especially after that $60 million deal you closed last week." Michael smiled in agreement. The $60 million contract with the Japanese multinational had been his biggest professional triumph. Years of hard work and determination were finally paying off. "I want ice cream, Daddy," James said, putting down his fork. "After you eat a bit more of your fish, champ," Michael replied, affectionately ruffling the boy's hair. A commotion at the entrance of the restaurant caught his attention. It wasn't loud, but it felt out of place in such a refined setting. Michael turned slightly, more curious than concerned. The maitre d' was speaking in low tones to 2 small figures. Michael squinted, trying to understand what was happening. Children, at Le Chateau. The restaurant had a strict policy against admitting anyone under 16. James was only there because of Michael's connections. The 2 children, girls, he now realized, seemed to be arguing with the maitre d'. They were dirty, wearing worn-out clothes and tangled hair, completely out of place among chandeliers and crystal glasses. "What's going on over there?" Emily whispered, leaning toward Michael. Before he could answer, the 2 girls slipped away from the maitre d' and started walking among the tables. Michael felt a faint unease. There was something strangely familiar about them, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was. "There he is!" one of the girls cried, pointing directly at their table. "I told you it was him." The entire restaurant fell into a sudden, suffocating silence. All conversations ceased. Every head turned. The girls ran toward their table, their footsteps echoing in the stunned quiet. They must have been around 7 years old, with identical faces. Twins, Michael realized with growing unease. "Daddy!" they shouted in unison, stopping a few feet from the table. Michael's world froze. The word hung in the air, almost visible, almost tangible. Emily dropped her fork, which clattered on the plate with a sharp clang. "Michael!" Her voice came out weak, confused. James stared at the girls, wide-eyed, fascinated by their sudden appearance. I don't know you," Michael managed to say at last. His own voice sounded strange to his ears. "There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," one of the girls said, stepping forward. "You're our dad." Michael felt dizzy. He looked at the girls, studying their features, trying to find any resemblance to himself or someone he knew. There was something about them that unsettled him, but his mind refused to make any connection. The restaurant security guards were approaching, but they seemed hesitant, unsure how to handle the situation. "Sir, do you know these children?" one of them asked, glancing nervously at Michael. "No," he replied automatically, but his voice betrayed doubt. "No, I don't." "Yes, you do," insisted the other girl. Her voice was softer than her sister's, but no less determined. "Our mum, Sarah, always said so." Sarah. The name hit Michael like a physical blow, causing him to recoil slightly. A name he hadn't heard in years, but one that awakened echoes of memories he had deliberately buried. Emily stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward. "We're leaving, Michael, now." Her tone was icy. "But Emily, Now!" She was already grabbing her purse and helping James to his feet. "I'm not staying here for this spectacle." Michael looked around. The entire restaurant was watching them. Some tried to hide it, but most stared openly, whispering among themselves. He felt his face burn. Emily was right. They had to leave. "Please, don't go," one of the girls pleaded, tugging on the sleeve of his jacket. "Get your hands off him." Emily practically snarled at the girls. "I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but it's not going to work." "It's not a scam," protested the more assertive girl, her eyes shining with suppressed tears. Michael felt trapped in a nightmare. All the elegance of the anniversary dinner had turned into a public circus. And that name Sarah echoed in his mind, digging up memories he had worked hard to bury. "Michael, I'm leaving with James. Come or stay," Emily declared, already heading for the exit, dragging a confused and reluctant James, who kept turning his head to look at the girls. "Sir, would you like us to escort them out?" asked the security guard, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Michael glanced at the girls. Something in their eyes. There was something familiar he couldn't identify, something that deeply unsettled him. Could it be true? Sarah. How many years had it been since? "I need to go," he finally said, pulling away. Still, he hesitated. How can I find you later?" The quieter girl's eyes lit up with hope. "We'll find you," answered the more assertive one, before security could intervene. Michael gave a brief nod, dropped several bills on the table, far more than necessary for the check, and gestured apologetically to the maitre d', who watched the scene with a mix of disapproval and fascination. As he rushed to catch up with Emily and James at the exit, Michael felt the weight of everyone's gaze on him. The successful man whose reputation had just been shaken by two ragged children. Outside, Emily was already opening the car door, her face a mask of contained fury. "I can't believe that just happened," she said as Michael approached. "On our wedding anniversary." "Emily, No, not now." She placed James in his booster seat in the back. "Let's go home. I don't want to discuss this here in the parking lot, where anyone can hear." Michael sighed and got in on the passenger side. Normally he would drive, but it was clear Emily needed the control right now. As the car pulled out of the parking lot, Michael looked out the window and saw the two girls standing at the restaurant entrance, watching them leave. Even from a distance, he could feel the weight of their gaze on him. "Are you okay?" Emily asked after a few minutes of tense silence. Her voice was now quieter, lowered so James wouldn't hear. "I'm fine," he lied. "It was just bizarre. Bizarre. Michael, those girls called you Dad, in front of everyone." She paused. "And they mentioned someone named Sarah." "Who is Sarah?" "Michael." Michael swallowed hard. Sarah. A name he hadn't uttered in years. A face he had tried to forget. "I don't know," he lied again. "Must be some kind of mix-up." Emily's silence indicated she wasn't convinced. In the back seat, James was almost asleep, the excitement of the day finally taking its toll. "Who were those girls, Daddy?" he asked in a sleepy voice. "They were nobody, honey," Emily answered before Michael could speak. "Just some confused children. They called me their brother," James murmured, his eyes already closing. Michael felt a chill. He hadn't heard that part during the commotion. The rest of the ride home was silent. Emily drove with her eyes fixed on the road, her jaw tense. Michael stared out the window, lost in thought, the name Sarah throbbing in his mind like a newly opened wound. There was something about those girls, something familiar that, now that the name had been mentioned, began to make a terrible kind of sense. And though he'd told Emily they meant nothing, something inside him knew that unexpected encounter was far from over. Somehow, those girls would find him again. And a part of him, a part he barely recognized, wanted to discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. 3 days had passed since the incident at the restaurant. Michael couldn't stop thinking about the twins and about Sarah. The name pounded in his mind, reviving memories he had buried for years. Each night, he slept poorly, tormented by fragmented dreams where he saw two small girls calling out to him in the darkness. At home, the tension was palpable. Emily alternated between long silences and indirect questions about his past. James, on the other hand, innocently referred to his sisters, prompting icy looks from Emily. On the morning of the fourth day, after Emily left to drop James off at preschool, Michael made a decision. Sitting in his office, he turned on his computer and began searching. Sarah, he murmured, typing the name into the search bar. Far too common a name to yield anything useful. He needed more information. He tried recalling her last name. Sarah Oliveira. That sounded right. He added the surname to the search, but the results were still overwhelming. He took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. If those girls really were... No, he couldn't accept that possibility so easily. But if they were, they would be around 7 years old. That meant Sarah would have gotten pregnant right after they broke up. Michael leaned back in his chair, feeling a tightness in his chest. If his calculations were correct, he had left Sarah when she might have already been pregnant without knowing it. He resumed the search, adding more terms: twins, hospitalized. Nothing relevant appeared. Frustrated, he picked up his phone and, after a moment of hesitation, called an old friend, Diego, who worked as a social services assistant. "Diego, it's Michael. I need a favor." 20 minutes later, he was in his car, driving toward the city center. Diego had agreed to meet him at a cafe near his office. When Michael arrived, Diego was already waiting at a secluded table, concern etched on his face. "Long time no see, Michael," he said, extending his hand. "You look terrible." Michael forced a smile. "Thanks for your honesty." "What's going on? You sounded really upset on the phone." Michael took a deep breath and briefly recounted the incident at the restaurant. He omitted the part about possibly knowing Sarah, presenting the case as a mystery he needed to solve for humanitarian reasons. "So you want to locate this woman, Sarah Oliveira, and her daughters?" "Yes. Apparently, she's in the hospital. The girls mentioned it." Diego narrowed his eyes, suspicious. "And why exactly do you care so much?" "They called you Dad, right?" Michael looked away. "I'm just worried about the children, Diego. They seemed really desperate." "Right," Diego replied, clearly not convinced. "Well, I can check the social services records. If these girls really have no adequate supervision while their mother is hospitalized, there should be a record." "Thank you. I really appreciate it." Diego nodded, still skeptical. "Give me a day or two, I'll see what I can find." The next day, earlier than Michael expected, his phone rang. It was Diego. "I found something," he said, his voice serious. "A Sarah Oliveira was admitted to Mercy Hospital 2 weeks ago. Severe pneumonia, complicated by chronic malnutrition and exhaustion. She's in the ICU." Michael felt the blood run cold in his veins. "And the daughters? That's where it gets complicated. There's a social services record for 7-year-old twins, Clara and Sofia Oliveira. Technically, they're under a neighbor's supervision while the mother is hospitalized, but in practice, well, it looks like they've basically been fending for themselves." "Where do they live?" "A rundown tenement in the Hope District." "It's no place for kids, Michael." Michael closed his eyes, feeling a wave of guilt. "Give me the address." Hours later, Michael parked his luxury car on a narrow, potholed street in the Hope District. The surrounding buildings were old and poorly maintained, many with broken windows patched with cardboard. The building he was looking for was a worn-out 3-story structure with peeling paint and a rusty metal exterior staircase. He climbed the steps slowly, feeling the metal tremble beneath his feet. On the 3rd floor, he found door number 307. He hesitated for a moment before knocking. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. "Who is it?" came an elderly woman's voice from inside. "My name is Michael Almeida. I'm looking for Clara and Sofia." The door opened a few inches, revealing a gray-haired lady with a deeply lined face. "Sarah's girls." She examined him with wary eyes. "Who are you?" "A family friend," he replied, avoiding her gaze. "I heard Sarah's in the hospital. I came to see how the girls are doing." The woman opened the door wider. "It's about time someone showed up. I've been doing what I can, but it's not easy. I have my own problems, you know. I can barely manage on my retirement." "Are the girls here?" "No. They're probably at the hospital, like always. They go there every day to see their mother. I doubt they can get in, but they try anyway." Michael felt a knot in his throat. "They go there alone?" "What do you think? I don't have money for bus fare for all three of us every day. They know the route. They're clever." Michael glanced briefly inside the apartment. It was a small, dimly lit room with a thin mattress on the floor. Clothes were folded in neat piles in the corner. A colorful drawing taped to the wall showed three figures, a woman and two girls, holding hands, with a big smiling sun above. "How was Sarah before she got sick?" Michael asked, unable to contain his curiosity. The woman sighed. "Working too much, eating too little. 2 jobs and still barely making rent. But she was a good mother, I can say that. Those girls never missed school. Always clean, always polite." "And the father?" Michael asked, feeling his throat go dry. "Never met him. Sarah never talked about him. Just said there was no father in the picture." She narrowed her eyes. "Why do you want to know? Who are you really?" "I'm just trying to help," Michael replied, avoiding her gaze. "Is the hospital far from here?" "Other side of the city. They take 2 buses to get there. They leave early and only come back late at night." Michael nodded, struggling to control the emotions threatening to overflow. "I'll look for them there, then. If you find them, tell them Ms. Cedar needs them to buy bread on the way back," the woman said before closing the door. Michael descended the rusty stairs, feeling the weight of each new discovery. The contrast between the life he had built for himself and the reality Sarah and the girls lived in was overwhelming. Back in his car, he sat for a few minutes, trying to process everything he had learned. Sarah was gravely ill, possibly fighting for her life. The girls, who could be his daughters, were roaming the city alone, desperate for help, while he lived in comfort and luxury. He picked up the phone and called Diego again. "I need more information about Sarah's condition," he said, as soon as his friend answered. "How serious is it?" "Serious, Michael. She needs specialized treatment that the public system doesn't cover. Without it, her chances are, well, not good." "How much does that treatment cost?" "From the reports I've seen, around $30,000. "Why?" Michael took a deep breath. "I'll cover it." "Can you give me the doctor's contact?" "Michael," Diego's voice grew serious. "Who is this woman to you, really?" "Someone I should have helped a long time ago," Michael replied, looking at the worn-out building where the girls lived. "Someone I abandoned." A long silence ensued on the other end. "Those girls, are they yours?" Diego finally asked. Michael closed his eyes. "I don't know, Diego. But I need to find out. What will you tell Emily?" The question hit Michael like a punch. Emily, his marriage, his carefully built life. Everything could fall apart if the truth came out. "I'll figure it out," he replied, without really having an answer. "First, I need to make sure Sarah gets the treatment she needs and that the girls are safe." "All right. I'll send you the doctor's contact. But Michael, try not to hurt anyone else in this story. It already seems like too many people are suffering." Michael hung up, Diego's words echoing in his mind. He started the car and drove off that narrow street, heading toward Mercy Hospital. He wasn't ready to see Sarah yet, not ready to face that confrontation, but at least he could ensure she got the care she needed to survive. And maybe, just maybe, find the twins and begin to understand what it meant to be the father he never knew he was. 3 days had passed since Michael discovered Sarah was hospitalized and the precarious conditions in which the twins lived. The information his friend Diego had provided echoed in his mind. Severe pneumonia, complicated by malnutrition, Mercy Hospital's ICU, the girls practically on their own, traveling back and forth across the city every day on crowded buses. Michael was in his office, staring at his computer screen without really seeing what was on it. His index finger tapped rhythmically on the desk, betraying his restlessness. The conversation with the girl's neighbor had raised more questions than answers. He needed the truth, no matter how painful. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Almeida, your next meeting is scheduled in 15 minutes, his secretary informed. "Cancel everything this afternoon," he replied suddenly. "A family emergency came up." "Yes, sir. Should I notify Mrs. Emily?" Michael hesitated. "No, I'll talk to her myself later." He grabbed his jacket and left, ignoring the curious looks from his team. A family emergency. He had never used that excuse before. His life was meticulously planned, leaving no room for emergencies or surprises. In the car, he mentally rehearsed what he would say to Sarah, how he would ask about the girl's paternity, how he would explain his absence all these years, if the twins really were his daughters. No scenario felt adequate. No explanation seemed sufficient. Mercy Hospital was located in the southern part of the city, in a working-class neighborhood, far from the financial district where Michael worked. The contrast was striking, from the mirrored skyscrapers to simple, worn-out buildings, from wide, tree-lined streets to narrow, congested roads. He parked his luxury car in front of the hospital, feeling out of place. For a few minutes, he sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to muster courage. Finally, he took a deep breath and got out. The hospital lobby was modest, with blue plastic seats and walls in a faded shade of yellow. Doctors, nurses, and patients moved about constantly. The typical hospital smell of disinfectant filled his nostrils. "May I help you?" asked the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with dark circles under her eyes. "I'm looking for Sarah Oliveira," Michael said, voice steadier than he expected. "I was informed she's hospitalized here." The woman typed something into her computer. "Yes, Sarah Oliveira, room 218. Only family can visit." "Hayosa, a close family friend," he replied, avoiding her gaze. She studied him for a moment, as though deciding whether to believe him, then shrugged. "Second floor? Turn right." Michael thanked her and took the stairs, avoiding the crowded elevator. Each step felt like a small battle, part of him wanting to press on, part wanting to run away. On the second floor, he walked down the white corridor, the room numbers gradually increasing, 210, 212, 214. When he reached 218, he stopped. Through the small glass window in the door, he could see a simple room with 4 beds. In one of them, he recognized Sarah immediately, even after all these years. She was thinner than he remembered, her face pale against the dark hair fanned out on the pillow. Her eyes were closed, apparently asleep. Beside her bed, the twins sat on plastic chairs, sharing what appeared to be half a sandwich. The scene hit him hard. Those girls sharing a single sandwich, waiting patiently by their sick mother's side. It was so far from his own reality, from his son James with all the toys and comforts money could buy. He knocked lightly on the door and entered. The twins turned their heads simultaneously. For a moment, they just stared at him, as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then Clara, the more assertive one, jumped to her feet. "You really came," she exclaimed, running toward him. Sophia stayed seated, watching him with cautious yet hopeful eyes. There was something in that look, something so familiar, it made his stomach tighten. "Shh," he said, gesturing toward a sleeping Sarah. "We don't want to wake her," Clara nodded, putting a finger to her lips in an exaggerated manner. "She's sleeping all the time," she whispered. "The doctors said it's because of the meds." Michael approached the bed, looking at the woman who had once been the center of his world. Sarah seemed so fragile, so vulnerable. Tubes connected to her arm, monitors beeping quietly at her side. How long had it been? 8 years? 9? Time had been kind in some ways. He still recognized her gentle features, the delicate curve of her lips but cruel in others. Lines of worry etched her face, even in sleep, and her skin had the pallor of someone worn down by years of hard work and insufficient care. "How is she?" he asked in a low voice. "Better," Sophia answered softly, speaking for the first time. Her voice was gentle, almost shy. "Yesterday she managed to sit up and eat some soup. The doctor said she needs to stay in the hospital for 2 more weeks, Clara chimed in. "But we can't afford that long." Michael felt a tightening in his chest. "Don't worry about that now," he said, not thinking of the implications of his words. Clara smiled, as though his words confirmed what she already believed, that he would take care of everything like a father should. Sophia simply watched him, her eyes so much like his own, studying him as if deciphering a complex puzzle. "Do you want to sit?" Clara offered him her chair. Michael nodded and sat down, now at eye level with the girls. "Father, you come here every day?" They both nodded. "We take 2 buses, Clara explained. Sophia memorized the route. "You come alone?" The question came out harsher than he intended, betraying his concern. "Mrs. Cedar can't always come," Sophia said. "She has to work." "What about school? Are you attending?" The girls exchanged guilty looks. "We can't leave Mom alone," Clara justified. Michael was about to say something when he noticed movement in the bed. Sarah was opening her eyes slowly, as if every motion demanded immense effort. "Clara? Sophia?" Her voice was a hoarse whisper. "We're here, Mom," Sophia answered, immediately at her side. Sarah gave a faint smile. Then her gaze wandered around the room and stopped on Michael. Her eyes widened, shock and disbelief mixing on her pale face. "Michael." The word came out like a sigh, barely audible. "Hello, Sarah," he replied, suddenly short of breath. She tried to sit up but lacked the strength. Sophia gently adjusted the pillow so she could see better. What are you doing here?" Sarah asked, her voice steadier now, tinged with tension. "The girls found me," he replied simply, "at the restaurant." Sarah looked at her daughters, a mix of surprise and mild reproach on her face. "You did that? How? We saw his photo in the newspaper," Clara explained quickly. "It talked about a business dinner at that fancy restaurant. We looked it up on Mrs. Cedar's phone." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to process the information. When she opened them again, her gaze was direct, piercing. "Girls," she said, her voice gaining strength, "could you give us a moment? Go buy some juice at the cafeteria, okay?" Clara looked ready to protest, but Sophia was already taking her hand. "Let's go," the quieter twins said. "They need to talk alone." Sarah took a few coins from the small purse at her bedside. It wasn't much, Michael realized with a pang. The girls took the money and left, Clara glancing back one last time before the door closed. Silence filled the room, heavy with years not lived and words unspoken. "You look different," Sarah finally said. "You do too," he replied. She gave a faint smile without humor. "Yes, pneumonia does that to a person." Michael looked away, unable to face the implicit accusation in her words. He looked around at the simple room, the other beds empty for the moment, paint peeling in places. "Sarah, he began, not sure what to say. "Why did you come, Michael?" There was a weariness in her voice beyond physical illness. "After all these years," he took a deep breath. "I need to know the truth. Those girls, are they my daughters?" Sarah studied him for a long moment, as if weighing how to respond. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes, Clara and Sophia are your daughters." Though he had suspected it, the confirmation hit him like a punch. Daughters. He had daughters. 2 7-year-olds who had grown up without a father, while he built his career, his marriage, his perfect life. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked, a hint of accusation creeping into his voice, accusation he had no right to feel. Sarah let out a weak laugh that turned into a cough. After regaining her composure, she looked at him with a mix of incredulity and hurt. I tried, Michael. In the first few months, I tried every way I could. You changed your number, moved away. All your old friends said they'd lost touch. It was like you just disappeared. Michael recalled how determined he'd been to sever ties with his past when he started climbing the professional ladder. A new life, new contacts, a new neighborhood, a new number. Everything to leave behind his humbler origins, including Sarah and what he considered a relationship that was holding him back. After a while, Sarah continued, I realized you didn't want to be found. You'd moved on without looking back, so I did the same. The difference is I had 2 lives to take care of besides my own. Guilt consumed him. There was no justification he could offer. How was the pregnancy? He asked, voice nearly failing. Sarah looked at the ceiling as if the memories were projected there. Hard. I worked until my 8th month, 2 shifts most days. After they were born, I went back to work after 6 weeks. I had no choice. I'm sorry, he said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. We didn't come here for your guilt, Michael, Sarah replied, surprising him with the firmness in her weak voice. What's done is done. The question is, why are you here now? The question caught him off guard. Why was he there? He had come for the truth, yes, but now that he had it, what did he intend to do with it? I want to help, he finally said. Now that I know the truth, I can't just ignore it. Sarah watched him with tired yet perceptive eyes. You have a family now, don't you? Michael nodded, surprised by her intuition. Yes, a wife, a young son. Something flickered across Sarah's face, not surprise, just confirmation of something she'd suspected. I figured, you look established. Emily doesn't know about the girls yet, he admitted. I mean, she saw them at the restaurant, but she doesn't know they're mine. When are you going to tell her? Soon? I need to find the right time. Sarah exhaled a weak sigh. Some things never change, Michael. You're always waiting for the perfect moment while life happens. Her words struck him deeper than he cared to admit. It was true. He had always been meticulous, calculating, waiting for the ideal conditions for every move in his life. That was how he built his career. It was how he approached his marriage. It was how he decided to leave Sarah years ago when she became an obstacle to his plans. The door opened and the twins came in, holding juice boxes. Clara immediately rushed to Michael, offering him one. We got one for you too, she said excitedly. Michael accepted the juice, feeling a strange surge of emotion at how naturally the girl treated him, as though his presence was something usual, expected. Sophia approached more calmly, watching him with those eyes that were a mirror of his own. The doctor came by while we were at the cafeteria, she informed Sarah. He said he'll come talk to you later. Sarah nodded, a flash of worry on her face. Michael didn't need to be a doctor to realize how serious her condition still was. Diego had said it. Severe pneumonia complicated by chronic malnutrition and exhaustion. Did the doctor say anything specific? Michael asked. Just that you need more tests, Sophia replied, and that the medication will take a while to have its full effect. Michael looked at Sarah, noticing the deep circles under her eyes, her labored breathing even at rest, her extreme paleness, severe pneumonia, he reminded himself, complicated by malnutrition and exhaustion. How much longer do you need to stay in the hospital? He asked. At least 2 weeks, and according to the doctors, she replied. But, she hesitated, glancing at the girls, I don't know if we can afford that long. The health insurance from my job expired when I got laid off last month. Laid off? Michael couldn't hide his surprise. Sarah shrugged, a gesture that seemed to cost her effort. I missed too many days when I started getting sick. Telemarketing doesn't forgive that. Michael nodded, understanding the precariousness of her situation. Don't worry about the hospital costs. I'll take care of it. Clara smiled as if his words confirmed what she already knew, that he could solve any problem. Sophia seemed more cautious, watching their interaction with eyes far too perceptive for her age. Why would you get sick of helping us? Sophia suddenly asked. catching them all off guard. "You left Mom alone before. Why would it be different now?" The question, so direct and incisive, left Michael speechless. Even Sarah seemed surprised by her daughter's bluntness. "Sophia," Sarah began, but Michael raised a gentle hand to stop her. "It's a fair question," he said, turning to Sophia. "I left because, at that time, I only thought about myself, what I wanted. I was selfish and immature, and you're right to wonder if I've changed." Sophia kept her gaze firm, waiting for more than just an admission of guilt. "I can't promise to be perfect," Michael continued, "but I can promise that now that I know about you, I won't just disappear again." Clara, ever impulsive, smiled immediately, but Sophia remained serious, evaluating him. "You swear?" she finally asked, her small voice revealing the vulnerable child behind the mature front. "I swear," Michael said, feeling the weight of that promise. Sarah watched this exchange with a mixture of emotions on her tired face: caution, hope, worry. "Michael," she said after a moment, "the girls need to go back to school. They can't keep coming here every day and missing class." He nodded. "I'll talk to Mrs. Saidu, see how I can help with that." "We don't want to leave Mom alone," Clara protested. "I know, sweetheart," Sarah replied, extending her hand to her daughter. "But the best way to help me now is by taking care of yourselves, going to school, learning." Michael glanced at his watch, surprised at how much time had passed. "I need to go," he said, standing up. "But I'll be back tomorrow. And in the meantime, I'll sort out the hospital issue." Sarah nodded, exhaustion evident in every movement. "Thank you," she said simply. Michael said goodbye to the girls, promising to return the next day. Clara hugged him impulsively, while Sophia only waved, still cautious, but with a tiny smile that hadn't been there before. Out in the hallway, away from Sarah and the girls' eyes, Michael leaned against the wall for a moment, feeling the weight of the situation. He had daughters. 2 daughters who had grown up without him, facing hardships no child should endure, and now he had a decision to make: how and to what extent they would be part of his life from now on. On his way to the exit, he stopped by the information desk. "I need to speak with the doctor in charge of Sarah Oliveira, room 218, he told the attendant. "It's about paying the hospital expenses." "Dr. Mendez is responsible. He'll be in tomorrow morning," the woman said. "Shall I schedule a time?" "Please, and I'd also like to settle the current bills." "Whom do I talk to about that?" The woman directed him to the finance department, where Michael left his credit card on file to cover all of Sarah's present and future expenses. In the parking lot, seated in his car, he picked up his phone. His finger hovered over Emily's name for several seconds before finally making the call. "Emily, I need to talk to you when I get home." "It's important." "Did something happen, Michael? Are you okay?" He hesitated. "I'm fine. But yes, something happened. Something that's going to change our lives. It's about those girls from the restaurant." The silence on the other end was deafening. "I'll be waiting," Emily finally said, her voice cold and distant. Michael ended the call, started the car, and pulled out of the parking lot. The drive home had never felt so long, so intimidating. Emily would surely be furious to learn he had daughters from a past relationship. James would be confused. His carefully structured life might change drastically. Still, as he drove, when he recalled the girls' faces, how Clara hugged him without hesitation, how Sophia questioned him with maturity beyond her years, and he knew, with a certainty he hadn't felt in a long time, that he couldn't pretend they didn't exist. He couldn't abandon them again. In what shape his involvement with the twins would take, he still didn't know. But he was sure of one thing. He had to be honest with Emily, and soon. The truth could no longer wait for the perfect moment that would never come. 2 weeks had passed since Michael discovered he was the twins' father. After the explosive conversation with Emily, marked by crying, shouting, and a devastating silence, they had reached a fragile agreement. Michael would provide financial help for the girls and be allowed to visit them. but he wouldn't bring them home, at least not yet. That Saturday afternoon, Michael was driving through the city's southern zone, his heart beating faster as he approached the tenement where his daughters lived with Ms. Sider. He'd arranged to take them to visit Sarah and then spend a few hours with them. In the back seat, a bag held small gifts, colorful books, crayons, and 2 identical teddy bears, differing only by the ribbons on their necks. He parked in front of the worn-out building, feeling again the stark contrast between his luxury car and the impoverished neighborhood. He took a deep breath before getting out. Even after several visits, he still felt like a stranger in the girls' lives, an outsider trying belatedly to be a father. He climbed the rusty metal stairs to the 3rd floor. Before he could even knock, the door of apartment 307 opened, and Clara stood there, as if she'd been peeking through the window, waiting. "You brought it," she exclaimed, noticing the bag in his hands. "Brought what?" Michael asked, feigning innocence. "Surprises." Clara jumped excitedly. "You always bring surprises." Sophia appeared behind her sister, more reserved as usual, but her eyes shone with the same anticipation. "Good morning, girls," he said, stepping into the apartment, a small, simple space but neat and organized. "How are you today?" "Good," Clara replied, already craning her neck to see inside the bag. Sophia just smiled shyly. "Go get ready so we can visit your mom," Michael suggested. The girls nodded and ran to the tiny section of the one-room apartment that served as their bedroom, separated only by a makeshift curtain. Miss Sider emerged from the minuscule kitchen, drying her hands on an apron. "They've been waiting for you since early morning," she commented. Clara barely touched her breakfast because she was so excited. Michael felt a mixture of joy and guilt. It was good to know they looked forward to seeing him, but it hurt to think how much time he had lost, how many breakfasts he hadn't shared. When they were ready, all 3 went downstairs to the car. During the ride to the hospital, Clara chatted non-stop about school and her friends, while Sophia observed the city through the window, occasionally nodding at her sister's stories. "Mom is feeling better," Sophia said suddenly, surprising Michael by breaking her usual silence. "The nurse said she might come home in a few days." Michael nodded, catching her gaze in the rearview mirror. "Yes, I talked to the doctor yesterday. She's responding well to the treatment." At the hospital, Sarah indeed looked better. She had regained some color and could sit up in bed without assistance. Her smile lit up the room when she saw her daughters. "Daddy brought gifts," Clara announced, running to hug her mother. Sarah looked at Michael, raising an eyebrow slightly. It was still strange for her to hear the girls call him that so naturally. "It's nothing much," he said, feeling self-conscious. "Just a few books and, well, you'll see later." During the visit, Michael watched the interaction between mother and daughters. The love between them was palpable, expressed in small gestures. Sarah smoothing Sophia's hair, Clara showing her mother a drawing made especially for her, Sophia quietly reciting a poem she had learned in school. A family united by adversity, by years of struggle together. A family he had not been part of. After about an hour, Sarah looked tired, and Michael suggested they let her rest. "I'll take the girls for a snack, and then bring them back to say goodbye. Okay?" Sarah nodded. "Thank you, Michael." On their way to the hospital cafeteria, Clara held Michael's hand naturally, while Sophia walked a little behind. "Sophia," he called, offering his other hand. "Want to hold it?" The girl hesitated for a moment, then accepted his hand. Her touch was light, almost reluctant, but it was there. Michael felt something expand in his chest. In the cafeteria, while the girls ate sandwiches and drank juice, he finally handed out the presents. Clara opened hers immediately, hugging the teddy bear with the pink ribbon. "I'm going to call him Cupcake," she declared, kissing the top of the bear's head. Sophia opened her package more carefully, unwrapping without tearing the paper. When she saw the identical teddy bear but with a blue ribbon, her eyes widened slightly. "Do you like it?" Michael asked, eager for her reaction. Sophia nodded, hugging the bear to her chest. A lot, she whispered. I'm going to call him Star. Michael smiled. Those are nice names. Clara was already flipping through one of the books, exclaiming over the illustrations. Sophia set her own book aside carefully, tucking it into her worn-out little backpack. Aren't you going to read now? Michael asked. I'll save it to read before bed, she answered. That way it lasts longer. That simple sentence hit Michael hard. There was so much restraint in this 7-year-old child, so much awareness that good things needed to be stretched as far as possible. After the snack, they suggested a walk in the hospital's small garden before going back to say goodbye to Sarah. As they strolled, Clara spotted a hummingbird and ran to get a closer look. At that moment, unexpectedly, Sophia slipped her hand into Michael's on her own initiative. Thank you for the teddy bear, she said, meeting his eyes briefly. I've never had one just for me. I always share everything with Clara. Michael felt a knot in his throat. You're welcome, Sophia. From now on, you'll have things just for you. I promise. The girl nodded and, for a moment, just a fleeting second, rested her head against his arm before stepping away to join her sister. Michael stood there, that brief contact reverberating through his entire being. That small gesture, so simple, felt more precious than all the multi-million-dollar contracts he had ever closed. Over the following week, Michael established a routine with the twins. After work, 3 times a week, he picked them up and took them to visit Sarah. On weekends, he devoted entire days to them, Saturday at a park, Sunday at the zoo. Emily observed this new routine with a mixture of resentment and resignation. James repeatedly asked when he would meet his older sisters. Michael lived divided between 2 worlds, 2 families, both demanding his presence and attention. The previous Saturday, he had taken the girls to a bookstore. He discovered Sophia was passionate about books, though she owned very few. Watching her walk among the shelves, touching the covers with reverence, carefully choosing 2 slim books, the maximum she allowed herself, despite Michael insisting he could buy more, filled him with both pride and sadness. When Mum comes home, will you keep visiting us? Sophia asked on their way back to the tenement, holding her new books protectively against her chest. Of course I will, Michael replied immediately. Always. Clara, in the back seat, sang happily, but Sophia studied him with those perceptive eyes. Do you really promise? She insisted. Even when it's hard. Michael understood what she was really asking. Would he stick around when the novelty wore off, when responsibilities piled up? Or would he disappear again, as he had before they were even born? I promise, Sophia, he said, summoning all the sincerity he could. You're my daughters. I'll always be present in your lives from now on. As he dropped them off that day, Clara hugged him tightly, as had become her habit. Sophia, to his surprise, also came forward and wrapped her arms around his waist, lingering a bit longer this time. See you tomorrow, Daddy, she said quietly, using that term which, until then, only Clara used so naturally. On the drive back home, the home he shared with Emily and James, the family that was also his, Michael couldn't stop replaying that Daddy, the way Sophia had finally called him that, the emerging trust he saw in her eyes. Small gestures that gradually built a bridge over the chasm of lost years. Small gestures that made him realize that despite all his professional achievements, there had been a void in his life that was only now beginning to be filled. The twins needed him. That much was clear from how their faces lit up when he arrived, how anxiously they waited. But yes, to his surprise, he realized he also needed them, in a way he never imagined needing anyone. Michael arrived home later than usual. He had spent the afternoon at the park with the twins, buying cotton candy and taking pictures on the carousel. When he entered the living room, he found Emily sitting on the couch, alone, with a half-finished glass of wine on the coffee table. The silence in the house indicated James was already asleep. Hi, he said, setting his keys on the side table. Everything okay? Emily sipped her wine before responding. You missed dinner. Again. I told you I'd be late today. I was with the girls. You're always with them now. Michael took a deep breath, feeling the tension in the air. For 3 weeks, he'd been spending more and more time with the twins, and every minute with them meant a minute less with his official family. Balancing it all was becoming impossible. Emily, we need to talk, he said, sitting in an armchair facing her. Really talk about this situation. What situation, Michael? The one where you have a secret family? The one where our marriage is falling apart? Or the one where you barely see your son these days? Her words hit him like precise arrows, truths he had been trying to avoid, focusing solely on making amends to the twins. I know it's been hard, he began, but I need you to understand the whole story. Emily let out a bitter laugh. Oh, now you want to tell the whole story. After 5 years of marriage, please, he pleaded, just listen to me. She leaned back on the couch, arms crossed defensively over her chest, and nodded tersely. I met Sarah when I was in college, Michael began. I was 22. She was 19. It was my first serious relationship, and it lasted almost 3 years. Emily's face remained impassive, but her fingers gripped the couch arm. When I graduated, I got a job offer in the capital. It was the start of my career, an opportunity I couldn't pass up. Sarah was still finishing her studies and he paused, confronting the shame of his past choices. I saw her as an obstacle to my plans, so I ended it. You abandoned her, Emily corrected, her voice cold. Yes, he admitted. I changed my number, moved, cut all ties. I was determined to build a new life without anything holding me back. What I didn't know was that Sarah was pregnant when I left, and she never tried to find you. She did at first, but I hid well. New number in new address. I blocked mutual friends on social media. For someone without resources like her, I practically disappeared. Emily shook her head in disbelief. So you basically erased that entire part of your life, as if it never existed. By the time we met 3 years later, I was already a different person. You met the successful executive Michael, not the Michael who left everything behind. You lied to me our entire relationship. I didn't lie. I just left out a past I thought didn't matter anymore. Emily stood up abruptly, walking to the window. Her silhouette against the city lights looked both fragile and rigid, like glass about to shatter. I did a DNA test, Michael continued. It arrived yesterday. The girls are mine, Emily, my daughters. She turned to face him, her eyes shining with restrained tears. And now you want to bring them into our home, into our lives. Sarah is leaving the hospital next week. She'll still need a lot of time to fully recover. The girls have no one else but her. They have you now, don't they, the remorseful father? The iciness in Emily's tone hurt him, but he knew he deserved it. Yes, they have me, and they need me, Emily. Can't you see? They grew up with nothing while our son has everything. How can I turn my back on that? So it's guilt, is that what we're doing here? You trying to atone for your sins at the expense of our marriage? Michael got up, moving closer to her. It's not just guilt. They're my daughters. I'm getting to know them now. And they're amazing girls, Emily. Sophia is so smart, so observant. And Clara has this contagious joy despite everything they've been through. Spare me the details. Emily raised her hand to stop him. Every time you talk about them, it's like twisting a knife in my chest. You know why? Because I see it in your eyes, Michael. I see how much you already care about them. Is that so bad? It is when it means our family is being left behind. James asks about you every day. When's Daddy coming home? Why didn't Daddy have dinner with us again? What am I supposed to tell him? Michael felt his guilt deepen. James, his little boy, feeling his absence. We have to tell him about his sisters, said Michael. He has the right to know. No! Emily's response was immediate and vehement. I don't want him knowing about this yet. He's too young. He already heard them call me Dad at the restaurant. Emily, he's already asked about them. We're just postponing the inevitable. Emily sat again, running her hands over her face in exhaustion. What exactly do you want, Michael? that I open my home to two children I don't even know, that I share my husband, who I barely see now, that I expose my son to this confusion. I want a chance for my complete family, he answered, quietly but firmly. All of my children under one roof. Emily was silent for a long moment, her face a mask of contained emotions. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a cold determination Michael had never heard before. If you bring those girls into this house, I'll file for divorce and take James away. The words hung in the air like a sentence. Emily, please. No, Michael. You made your choice a long time ago when you decided to abandon that woman. Now you're making another choice, and I also have the right to make mine. Is that an ultimatum? Call it what you want. But I won't allow our son to be affected by your past mistakes. I won't watch our family break apart to fix something you did long before you met me. Michael felt as though the ground had dropped out from under him. The possibility of losing Emily and James was as painful as the thought of abandoning the twins again. There has to be a middle ground, he tried. A way I can be there for all my children. Emily shook her head. There is no middle ground here, Michael. Either you're a father to your son here with us, or you're a father to those girls. You can't have everything. That's not fair. Fair? Emily gave a mirthless laugh. Ask Sarah what's fair. Ask your daughters what's fair. Life isn't fair, Michael. You should know that better than anyone. She stood, picking up the empty wine glass. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. I need to think, and so do you. Michael was left alone in the living room, feeling the weight of his past and present choices on his shoulders. On one side, Emily and James, the family he had deliberately built, the future he had planned. On the other, Clara and Sophia, products of a love he had abandoned, the responsibility he had ignored for years. How could he choose? How could he split his heart between two families that, through his own fault, would never be one? The clock on the wall ticked the hours mercilessly, reminding him time was passing. Soon Sarah would be out of the hospital. Soon he would have to make a definitive decision, and whatever that decision, someone would get hurt. 3 days had passed since Michael and Emily's confrontation. Though they shared the same house, it was as if they lived in different worlds. They spoke only when necessary, usually in short phrases, and avoided eye contact. James sensed the tension and became quieter, clinging to his mother. On that Sunday morning, Michael left early, saying only that he was going to visit Sarah at the hospital. It would be her last day as an inpatient. She would be discharged the next day, still weak but sufficiently recovered to continue treatment at home. Emily stayed in the kitchen, absently stirring her coffee as it grew cold. An idea that had been forming in her mind for the past few days finally took solid shape. She needed to see for herself. She needed to meet the girls, understand what drew Michael so strongly, what made him risk his family for them. "Grandma can watch James today?" the boy asked, breaking into her thoughts. "I want to go to her house." Emily looked at her son, her expression softening instantly. "I think that's a great idea, sweetie. I'll call her now." Half an hour later, after dropping James off with Michael's mother, Emily drove toward Mercy Hospital. She parked a few spaces away from Michael's car, her heart pounding. She was venturing into unknown territory, intruding on part of her husband's life that he'd kept separate. But she had to know. She entered the hospital like any ordinary visitor. At reception, she hesitated only briefly before asking for Sarah Oliveira's room, second floor, room 218. She took the stairs slowly, walking down the corridor. When she reached the indicated room, she heard Michael's voice, followed by children's laughter. She stopped a few yards from the slightly open door, where she could see inside without being seen. Michael sat in a chair between Sarah's bed and two girls. One of them, the more talkative one, Emily presumed, was telling an animated story, gesturing dramatically. The other, quieter girl, simply watched, occasionally smiling. Sarah looked better than Emily had imagined, though still visibly frail. "And then the teacher said my drawing was the most creative in class," exclaimed the more extroverted girl. I drew our family, Mom, me, Sophia, Daddy, and even James, even though we haven't met him yet. Emily felt a pang in her chest at hearing her son's name included so naturally in the girl's drawing. To these children, James was already a brother, even without having met him. For the first time, she really looked at the twins. They were pretty, with dark hair like Michael's and expressive eyes. Despite their simple clothes, they carried themselves with a dignity, especially the quieter one, Sophia, if she remembered correctly. Clara, are you feeling okay? Michael's voice interrupted her thoughts. He leaned closer to the more talkative girl, who had started coughing. Just a little cough, Daddy, Clara said, but her cheeks were flushed. Michael put his hand on her forehead. You feel warm. Sarah, has she been like this since yesterday? Sarah sat up, worry crossing her pale features. She complained of a sore throat last night, but I thought it would pass. Sophia got up and stood by her sister, holding her hand. She didn't sleep well, she was coughing. Emily watched as Michael took out his phone, probably calling a doctor. His voice was calm but contained the same concern he showed whenever James was sick. Dr. Martinez can see us now in the pediatric ER, he said after hanging up. I'm taking Clara there. Sophia, can you stay here with your mum? I don't want to be away from Clara, Sophia protested, clinging to her sister's hand. Please. You can come too, Michael relented. Sarah, we'll be right back. Sarah nodded, her face tight with worry. Take good care of them, Michael. Emily quickly stepped out of sight, hiding behind a side corridor as Michael left the room with the two girls. Clara looked noticeably more unwell, leaning on him as they walked. Sophia walked on the other side, holding her sister's hand firmly. She waited a few minutes before quietly following them to the pediatric ER. Through a glass door, she watched Michael fill out forms, Clara on his lap, now visibly feverish, Sophia right beside them, standing as close as possible. For nearly 2 hours, Emily stayed in that hallway, watching from a distance. She saw them call Clara for the examination, how Michael gently carried her, how Sophia refused to let go of her sister's hand for even a second. She saw them disappear behind the exam room door, reappear, then head to the hospital pharmacy. What struck her most was how natural it all seemed. Michael acting like a father to those girls, as if he'd always been, not like a stranger trying to make up for lost years. And the girls responded to him with a trust that seemed impossible to have been built in so short a time. When they finally left the ER, Emily caught part of the conversation. It's just a throat infection, Michael explained. Nothing serious, but you need antibiotics and rest. Can we go back to Mom now? Sophia asked. First we'll stop by the pharmacy to get the meds. Clara, are you feeling really bad? The girl nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. It hurts to swallow. Emily saw the concern on Michael's face, the same expression he wore when James was sick. She saw him hug Clara protectively while keeping Sophia close with the other hand. A father with his daughters, there was no other way to describe the scene. Something inside Emily shifted, a memory she had long buried resurfacing. She had been 10 years old when she fell seriously ill with pneumonia, just like Sarah. Her own mother, overwhelmed by 2 jobs and with no one to help, couldn't stay with her in the hospital. That feeling of loneliness, of abandonment, even knowing her mother had no choice, still occasionally haunted her. These girls had gone through something similar, she realized. With Sarah sick, they had essentially been alone, relying on the charity of an elderly neighbor, until Michael showed up. Without noticing, Emily followed them to the parking lot, keeping a safe distance. She saw Michael carefully place Clara in the back seat, Sophia sliding over next to her sister, the 2 teddy bears, one pink, one blue, firmly in their arms. Emily heard Clara's weak voice ask, "Where are we going, Daddy?" "We need to figure out where you'll stay while you're sick," Michael replied. "Mrs. Sider can't really care for you in that condition." "Can we stay with you?" Sophia asked so softly, Emily barely heard her. Michael hesitated, his hand on the car door. "I need to talk to some people first." That was when Emily did something that surprised even herself. She emerged from her hiding place and walked toward them. "Michael." He turned, shock evident on his face. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I needed to see for myself," she replied simply, then looked at the girls in the car. Clara was clearly feverish, and Sophia watched Emily with concerned eyes. "Is she sick?" "Throat infection," Michael answered, still baffled by his wife's appearance. "She needs antibiotics and rest." Emily took a deep breath, the memories of her own childhood illness still fresh in her mind. "Bring them home." "What?" "Bring them home," she repeated, her voice firmer this time. "She can't stay in that tenement while she's sick, and the other one won't want to be separated from her sister." Michael looked at her in disbelief. "Emily, are you sure?" "No," she admitted. "I'm not sure about anything." "But—" She glanced at the girls in the car, especially Clara, pale and ill. "They can stay until she gets better. Then we'll see." Michael seemed at a loss for words. Thank you." Emily nodded stiffly. "I'll go ahead. I need to prepare some things." She turned and walked back to her car, her heart hammering in her chest. As she drove home, tears she hadn't realized she was holding back began streaming down her face. She didn't know if she was doing the right thing or making the biggest mistake of her life. She only knew she couldn't leave that sick child without a proper place to recover. She couldn't be part of inflicting on another child the same pain she herself felt at 10 years old. The girls would only stay until Clara got better, she told herself. It was just temporary. An emergency solution. Nothing more. But a small voice in her heart whispered that maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something more. A week had passed since Clara and Sophia arrived at Michael and Emily's house. What was supposed to be a temporary arrangement for Clara's recovery was starting to feel more permanent, though no one dared say it aloud. Sarah had been discharged from the hospital and was settled in a small apartment Michael had rented to help her recover. She visited the girls daily but was still too weak to care for them on her own. The pneumonia had left lasting effects that required months of physical therapy and ongoing medication. Emily stood at the kitchen door, watching the twins seated at the dining table with James. Clara, now recovered from her throat infection, was drawing excitedly, occasionally helping James color within the lines. Sophia was reading a book, looking up every few minutes to check if their little brother needed anything. There was a naturalness to their interaction that Emily hadn't expected. The girls had adapted surprisingly well to the household routine, as though a space had always been there for them, waiting for them to arrive. James, even for his part, was thrilled to have big sisters, especially Clara, who constantly invented games and stories to entertain him. "Look, Emily," James called, holding up his drawing. "Clara taught me how to draw a dinosaur." Emily smiled, stepping into the kitchen. "That's really good, honey." Clara looked up, a hint of hesitation in her eyes, as if seeking approval. Emily felt a pang in her chest. The girl still worried about being sent away at any moment. "Are you hungry?" Emily asked, surprised by how natural the question felt. "I can make hot chocolate." Clara's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Sure," Emily replied, already taking milk from the fridge. "Sophia, would you like some too?" Sophia lifted her eyes from the book, a small smile on her lips. "Yes, please." While she prepared the drinks, Emily reflected on how her perspective had changed over the last few days. The twins were no longer rivals competing for Michael's attention or threats to her family's stability. They were simply children who had experienced hardships no child should face, yet still managed to be polite and grateful for every little gesture. The night before, Emily had overheard Sophia reading James a bedtime story, her soft voice narrating a tale about stars. When she thought no one was watching, Sophia had tucked the blanket around James and placed a light kiss on his forehead. That simple gesture had broken something inside Emily, the barrier she'd built to protect herself, her son, and her marriage. The sound of the front door opening announced Michael's arrival. He walked into the kitchen, looking tired, but pleased to see a cozy domestic scene. "Daddy!" James exclaimed, running to hug him. Clara followed with equal enthusiasm, while Sophia offered a shy smile from her seat. "How are my artists?" Michael asked, ruffling James's and Clara's hair. "I see you've been busy." Emily noted how naturally he included the twins in every interaction, as though they had always been there. He was a father with his children, all of them. The division she'd insisted on keeping was disappearing day by day. "We need to talk," Michael whispered to her as he leaned in for a kiss. "Later." She nodded, knowing exactly what he wanted to discuss. After the children were in bed, the twins sharing the guest room temporarily turned into their space. Michael and Emily sat on the porch, 2 glasses of wine between them. "I spoke with Sarah today," Michael began. "She still has at least 2 months of recovery ahead of her. Even after that, the doctor doesn't recommend she be alone with the girls yet." Emily stared at her wine, swirling it slowly. "You want them to stay here permanently, don't you?" "I want them to have a home, Emily, a stable home, with a family. And the tenement they used to live in. You saw how they lived. That wasn't a home, it was survival. 1 room for 3 people. No proper ventilation, no space to play or study." Emily took a deep breath. Over the week, she had gathered pieces of the girls' lives through casual conversations. Clara mentioning how she and Sophia shared a single mattress. Sophia explaining Han with unsettling maturity how they conserved water to reduce the monthly bill. "My mother called today," Emily said after a pause. "She heard rumors about the girls. A friend from church saw us at the park on Sunday. People are talking, speculating about who these kids staying with us are." Michael frowned. "Does that bother you? What other people think?" "It did," she admitted. "A lot. The idea of being judged, pitied, the poor wife who took in her husband's illegitimate daughters." "Emily, but then I realized it doesn't matter," she continued. "What matters are those girls upstairs. What matters is that they deserve stability, safety, a place to call home." Michael looked at her in surprise. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying it won't be easy. I still have moments when I feel angry, jealous, afraid, but I also see how much you love them, how much James already adores them, and it would be cruel to separate all of you now." Michael took her hand, squeezing gently. "I'm not asking you to be their mother. Sarah will always be their mother. I know, but I can be something. Someone who cares for them, who's there for them. I can learn to do that." There were tears in Michael's eyes. "You have no idea what that means to me." "I'm not doing this just for you," she said honestly. "I'm doing it for all of us, for James, who loves his sisters, for those girls who deserve a better chance. And for me, because I don't want to be the kind of person who turns her back on children who need help." Michael leaned in to kiss her, a kiss filled with gratitude and silent promises. "And Sarah?" Emily asked after a moment. "What's the arrangement going to be? I'll talk to her tomorrow. We need to find a balance that works for everyone. Maybe the girls can stay with us during the week for school and spend weekends with Sarah. Or whatever arrangement is best for them." Emily nodded. "One step at a time." The next morning, while making breakfast, Emily heard laughter from upstairs. She went up quietly and stopped at the twins' bedroom door, slightly ajar. James was between Clara and Sophia on the improvised bed, the 3 of them laughing while Clara made shadow animals on the wall. It was a simple, everyday scene for many families. But for Emily, it represented a transformation from resistance to acceptance, from fear to love. These children, all of them, were now her family. A non-traditional family, certainly. A family that would face challenges, judgment, difficult moments, but a family nonetheless. When Sophia noticed her presence and smiled, a genuine smile, with none of the hesitation or fear from the early days, Emily knew the difficult choice had already been made. Not just by Michael, who chose to fully embrace his role as a father, but by her who chose to open her heart to two children who desperately needed a place to belong. There would be hard days ahead. She knew that. Arrangements with Sarah, explanations to relatives and friends, the constant adjustments every family goes through. But in that moment, watching the three children together, Emily felt a calm certainty. Love has no barriers when we allow ourselves to feel it fully. 3 months had passed since the twins officially moved into Michael and Emily's home. What began as a temporary arrangement for Clara's recovery had turned into a new family structure that, surprisingly, worked for everyone. Autumn had arrived, coloring the garden's trees in shades of red and gold. Michael stood on the porch, watching the three children playing on the leaf-covered lawn. James, almost 5 now, followed Clara everywhere like a tiny, devoted shadow. Sophia, as always more reserved, sat under a tree reading, but looked up every few minutes to keep an eye on the other two. They looked like they were born into the same family, Emily commented, joining Michael with 2 steaming cups of tea. Michael smiled, accepting the cup she offered. It's amazing how they've adapted, isn't it? Especially James. I think he's always wanted siblings. The girls are great with him, Emily agreed. Her own transformation over the past months had amazed everyone, including herself. What started as reluctant tolerance had blossomed into genuine affection for the twins. Sophia helped him with his letters yesterday. She has incredible patience. She's always been like that. Even in the hospital, when Sarah was sick, Sophia was the one who kept Clara calm, who organized everything. Emily nodded, sipping her tea. When is Sarah coming over today? Around 5. I thought we could make a special dinner. Their new arrangement included Sarah, now almost fully recovered from pneumonia. The twins stayed with Michael and Emily during the week, attending the local school, and spent weekends with their mother in the apartment Michael had rented for her. Sarah joined them for dinner every Wednesday, and every other Sunday, the children spent the night with her. It was a delicate balance, but it worked better than any of them could have predicted. Did she accept the scholarship offer? Emily asked. Michael smiled. Yes, finally. She starts classes at the college next semester. That had been his most recent initiative, to help Sarah build a stable future. After discovering she had quit her nursing studies for lack of funds when she got pregnant, Michael pulled strings to get her a scholarship so she could finish her training. Initially, Sarah resisted, too proud to accept more help. But Michael insisted it wasn't charity. It was reparation, an investment in the girls' future through their mother. With a degree, Sarah could eventually provide a better life for her daughters by her own means. "Daddy, look!" James shouted from the garden, calling Michael's attention. The boy had climbed on Clara's shoulders, waving excitedly. "I'm huge!" "I can see that, buddy. Careful not to fall." Clara held James's legs firmly, spinning slowly while he laughed. Sophia had put her book aside and moved closer, arms out in case he slipped. "I never thought we'd reach this point," Emily confessed, watching the scene. "There were times I thought our marriage wouldn't survive." Michael took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Thank you for giving it a chance. I know it wasn't easy." "It wasn't," she agreed. "But looking back, I can't imagine our life without them now. It's like they were always meant to be part of the family." The first weeks had been the hardest. There were moments of tension, jealousy on both sides, painful adjustments. The twins had to adapt to rules and routines they'd never known. Emily had to learn to share her space and her husband's attention. Michael constantly struggled to meet everyone's needs, afraid of failing again as a father. But day by day, small victories accumulated. The first time Sophia asked Emily for help with homework instead of waiting for Michael. The day Clara spontaneously hugged Emily after a compliment on her grades. The night James had a nightmare and sought comfort not just from his parents, but from his sisters too. "Sarah looked good at her last appointment," Michael said, bringing Emily back to the present. "The doctor said she's off any major physical restrictions now. Just needs to keep taking preventive medication for a few more months." "That's great," Emily hesitated. What do you think about her moving closer when her lease expires? There are some houses for rent in our neighborhood. It would be easier for the girls to go back and forth." Michael looked at his wife with surprise and gratitude. "You wouldn't mind? At first I thought it would be weird having your ex so close, but Sarah's a good person. And it would be better for the girls to have their mom nearby." Michael kissed Emily's hand, pride swelling in his chest for the woman he had chosen to share his life with. "You're amazing, you know," she smiled. "I'm just doing what's best for the kids. All of them." In the garden, Sophia had now joined the game, forming a train with Clara and James as they weaved through piles of fallen leaves. "Shall we join them?" Emily suggested, placing her cup on a small side table. In answer, Michael stood up, pulling her along toward the children. "Dad! Mom! Come be part of our train," James yelled, his cheerful laughter echoing across the yard. Emily hesitated only a second at hearing James call her Mom in front of the twins, something they usually avoided to prevent confusion or undermining Sarah's role. But Clara and Sophia seemed perfectly at ease, as if they understood there was enough room in their lives for two mother figures. At dusk, when Sarah arrived for dinner, she found the whole family in the living room. Michael was helping James and Clara with a puzzle too advanced for the boys' age, while Sophia and Emily set the table, chatting quietly. "Mom!" The twins ran to hug her as soon as they saw her. Sarah hugged them both tightly, kissing the tops of their heads. "I missed you so much, my little ones. Did you bring the college papers?" Sophia asked, ever practical. "Yes, I did. Everything's ready for January." Michael approached, greeting Sarah with a brief but warm hug. "Welcome. We were waiting for you to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" Sarah asked. "Everything," he replied simply. "A new beginning for all of us." Emily brought out a steaming dish from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready. Kids, wash your hands, please." As the children ran off to the bathroom, laughter echoing, the three adults exchanged glances, no longer marked by distrust or resentment, but by shared understanding. They had found, against all odds, a balance that allowed them all to thrive. During dinner, amid conversation and laughter, Michael looked around at his extended family. James excitedly talked about his swim class. Clara kept interrupting with her own stories. Sophia quietly observed, occasionally correcting her sister's exaggerations. Emily and Sarah discussed the upcoming school year as naturally as old friends. This was his family now, certainly not traditional, not what he had planned or imagined, but somehow far richer, far more complete than he ever could have dreamed. Raising his glass in a silent toast, Michael gave thanks for the second chance, for the opportunity to correct his past mistakes, and above all, for the chance to know and love his daughters, all of his daughters, and to see his son grow up surrounded by so much love. It was a new beginning, for all of them. Spring sunlight lit up the two-story house in Maplewood Garden, just 10 minutes from Michael and Emily's home. Boxes were stacked at the entrance while Sarah, Clara, and Sophia carried their belongings inside, assisted by Michael, Emily, and James. "Careful with that vase. It was my grandma's," Sarah warned, as Clara rushed excitedly down the corridor of the new house. Michael took in the scene with a deep sense of fulfillment. The decision to buy a house for Sarah and the girls in this neighborhood hadn't been made lightly. The close proximity allowed frequent visits and made it easier for the twins to travel between the two homes, while giving Sarah the independence she wanted. When he found the property for sale, a comfortable house with 3 bedrooms, a small but well-kept yard, on a quiet street near good schools, he knew immediately it was perfect. Emily not only supported the purchase, she helped choose the furniture and decor, surprising everyone with her enthusiasm. "What do you think of your room?" Emily asked Sophia, who was coming down the stairs with a thoughtful expression. "It's perfect," the girl replied, a discreet smile brightening her face. "There's a big window where I can read in natural light." Emily smiled, tucking a strand of Sophia's hair behind her ear, an affectionate gesture that would have been unthinkable a few months earlier. Her attitude toward the girls had changed gradually but profoundly. From initial resentment to reluctant acceptance, she now displayed genuine love that astonished everyone, including herself. The week before, Michael had finalized the official paternity registration for the twins. The moment at the registry office, with the girls watching him sign the documents, had been emotional for everyone. Clara, impulsive as usual, jumped into his arms declaring she was officially an Almeida. Sophia, more reserved, simply squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with tears she tried to hide. "Moving is more tiring than I remember," Sarah commented, entering the living room with a box of dishes. Her health was fully restored now, her face rosy and energetic. No trace of the pallor pneumonia had caused. "Let me carry that," Michael offered, taking the heavy box. "I already started the enrollment process for college," Sarah said, following him into the kitchen. "Classes begin in 2 weeks." "Great. Since you're so close now, I can pick up the girls when you have night classes." The proximity was one of the biggest advantages of the new arrangement. The twins could easily switch houses, and Michael could be a regular presence in their lives without crossing the city every time. James ran through the living room, chased by Clara in an improvised game. Sophia watched from the stairs, a forgotten book in her lap as she smiled at the pair. "Mom, can we have a welcome picnic in the yard?" Clara asked, halting her chase abruptly. "Great idea," Emily replied before Sarah could answer. "I brought sandwiches and juice. We can all have lunch out there." The look Sarah and Emily exchanged was one of mutual gratitude and understanding. What could have been a relationship tainted by jealousy and resentment had transformed into an unlikely friendship, united by the love they both had for the children that connected their lives. Out in the new house's yard, they spread a blanket on the grass. The children sat in a circle, James between his 2 sisters as he preferred. Michael observed his expanded family, not conventional, certainly, but filled with love and authenticity. As they handed out sandwiches and poured juice into colorful cups, Michael realized a simple truth. Redemption doesn't come from grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It comes from small moments like this, from daily choices to show up, to love, to repair the past through consistent action in the present. Sarah raised her cup in a silent toast, first to Michael, then to Emily, a gesture of gratitude, of acknowledgement of the extraordinary journey they had all shared. "To our family," Sophia said softly, surprising everyone with her unusual initiative. "To our family," they repeated in unison, raising the colorful cups toward the bright spring sky. The yard at Sarah's new house was decorated with colorful lanterns and ribbons that swayed gently in the warm late afternoon breeze. A long table had been placed under an old jabuticaba tree, covered with a white cloth and set with plates, cutlery, and cups. It was a special day, the official celebration of Clara and Sophia's registration as Michael Almeida's daughters. Michael bustled around, making sure everything was perfect. He wanted this day to be unforgettable for Clara and Sophia, his daughters. Officially, legally, undeniably his daughters. He still found it hard to believe that in just a few months his life had changed so drastically. The man who once left a girlfriend behind in pursuit of a success unencumbered by obstacles was now at the center of a complicated but surprisingly functional family network. "Great-grandparents are here," James announced, having appointed himself the official doorman for the party, running across the yard with his little bow tie askew. Michael's parents, still adjusting to the sudden addition of 2 granddaughters, entered carrying brightly wrapped packages. Michael noticed how Clara ran to hug them with her trademark spontaneity, while Sophia approached more slowly, always the more cautious one. The house filled up gradually, Michael's brother and his family, Sarah's sister with her husband and young son, a few close neighbors, friends from the girls' school. A house that had been empty and lifeless just a few weeks before now overflowed with voices and laughter. "Emily's not here yet?" asked Richard, Michael's father, as he helped set up the barbecue. "She should be arriving soon. She had to swing by the bakery to pick up the cake." As if summoned by his words, Emily appeared at the garden gate, carrying a huge bakery box. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was awful," she announced, carefully walking so as not to jostle the cake. Michael rushed to help her, while the twins hovered nearby, eager to see what was in the box. "Is it chocolate?" Clara asked, trying to lift the lid. "Clara, have some manners," Sophia chided, ever the voice of reason. "But is it chocolate, though?" Emily laughed. "Chocolate with a brigadeiro filling, and there are 2 sugar figurines on top, one in a pink dress and one in a blue dress." The girls exchanged delighted looks. Emily had nailed their favorite colors. "Sarah is inside getting ready," Michael explained, carrying the cake to the table. "Could you tell her most people are already here?" The twins ran inside, leaving a trail of giggles. Emily adjusted the tablecloth, placing the cake front and center. "You all right?" Michael asked, noticing slight tension in her expression. "I'm fine," she said, smiling. "Just a bit tired. James made me read 3 bedtime stories last night. He's been clingier since the girls joined our family, huh?" "I think he's just making sure he still gets enough attention," Emily agreed, her smile showing no real worry. James had adapted remarkably well to being the youngest sibling. A cry rang from inside the house, not of fear or pain but of surprise, the kind someone makes when witnessing something completely unexpected. Michael and Emily exchanged alarmed looks before running indoors. In the living room, they found Sarah and the twins, but the scene was not what they'd anticipated. Sarah stood frozen, a hand over her mouth, wide-eyed, staring at Emily, who had just walked in behind Michael. "It can't be," Sarah mumbled, her voice choked with emotion. Emily, who had reached the doorway, also froze. Confusion shifted to shock, then to disbelief on her face. "Lily?" The word slipped from Sarah's lips in a near whisper. "Sah," Emily responded, using a nickname Michael had never heard before. Both women stood there, looking at each other as if they were seeing ghosts. Clara and Sophia watched in confusion, equally baffled. "You two know each other?" Michael finally asked, breaking the tense silence. "We do," Sarah said, still stunned. "Or we did in childhood. At the Santa Clara orphanage," Emily added, her voice barely audible. "We were—" She paused, drawing in a shaky breath. "We were best friends." Michael felt as though the floor had vanished beneath him. Emily, his wife, and Sarah, his ex-girlfriend and the mother of his twins, had grown up together in an orphanage. The coincidence was so impossible it bordered on absurd. "But you got adopted," Sarah went on, taking a hesitant step toward Emily. "When we were, 10? 9, Emily corrected automatically. "It was 2 weeks before my 10th birthday." "You never came back," Sarah said, an old hurt shadowing her voice. "I waited for you to visit like you promised." Emily lowered her eyes. "My adoptive parents moved abroad a week later. I tried writing, but I didn't know your full last name back then." The twins looked from their mother to Emily, speechless. Michael was also at a loss, trying to process the astronomically unlikely truth unfolding before him. "Emily is an adopted name, right?" Sarah asked gently. "You used to be—" "Emiliana," Emily finished, "but nobody used that name except the nuns. To everyone else, I was—" "Lily," they said in unison, and something in that shared moment seemed to break the tension. Sarah took another step forward, and suddenly the 2 women were embracing. A desperate hug full of decades of separation and unasked questions. Emily sobbed openly, something Michael had rarely seen, while Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. "I can't believe it," Sarah repeated through tears. "Of all the people in the world—" Clara tugged on Michael's shirt sleeve. "Daddy, what's happening?" Michael crouched to her level. "It looks like your mom and Emily knew each other as kids. They were really close friends but lost contact." Sophia, ever analytical, frowned. "So Emily knew Mom before you knew either of them?" "Apparently so," Michael replied, still reeling. "This is just like a movie," Clara exclaimed, eyes shining with excitement. Sarah and Emily finally broke apart, still holding each other's hands as if afraid the other would disappear again if they let go. "We need to talk," Sarah said. "There's so much to catch up on." "But the party," Emily murmured, glancing out at the garden full of guests. "They're all waiting." "The party can wait a few minutes," Michael decided. This is important." The two women sat on the couch, still hand in hand, while Michael led the twins back to the garden to give them privacy. As he went, he couldn't stop thinking about the strange symmetry of it all. For months, he had feared Emily and Sarah would never get along. He'd envisioned years of tension, forced politeness, veiled competition, and now he discovered they shared a history, a past, a bond that went back to before he was ever in the picture. Fate had a strange sense of humor. Outside, the guests were beginning to wonder about the delay. "We'll be starting a bit late," Michael announced. "There's a family situation. Sarah and Emily will join us soon. They used to be friends when they were kids," Clara cheerfully informed anyone who would listen, "just like in a movie." 20 minutes later, Sarah and Emily emerged from the house, eyes red but smiling. There was a new lightness between them, as if an invisible weight had been lifted. "Sorry for the delay," Sarah told the guests. "We just had a surprising revelation." Michael watched as the two women stayed close for the entire party, occasionally leaning in to whisper or exchanging knowing smiles whenever someone commented on the incredible coincidence of their intertwined lives. "I don't know how to process this," Michael confessed to Emily later that evening as they headed home. The twins had stayed with Sarah, and James slept peacefully in the back seat. "Honestly, neither do I," she replied. "It's like all the pieces of a puzzle finally fit. But the final picture is something I never could have imagined." "This changes things, doesn't it, between you and Sarah?" Emily thought for a moment. "It does. It's like reclaiming a part of myself I thought was lost. We grew up together in that terrible place, Michael. Sarah was the only family I had before I was adopted." Michael reached across the console to entwine her fingers in his. "I'm happy for both of you. It's funny, for so long I resisted accepting the girls because I saw them as a threat to our family, and now I find out that through them, I've regained a piece of my own history." In the weeks that followed, the dynamic between the two families changed completely. What had been a carefully negotiated arrangement, with implied rules and divided territories, became something fluid and natural. Sarah and Emily spent hours talking, rebuilding the puzzle of their separate lives, finding common points they never dreamed existed. The twins thrived in this new environment. The tension they had initially felt, fear of choosing sides or hurting anyone's feelings, vanished entirely. Clara became even more extroverted, filling Sarah's house with stories of her days at school and activities with James and Michael. Sophia, more reserved, surprised everyone by asking Emily to help with a science project, inviting her into her private space in a way that would have been unthinkable before. Weekends became impromptu celebrations, sometimes at Sarah's house, sometimes at Michael and Emily's. Both families gathered for lunches that stretched into evenings, intense board games, and movie nights with homemade popcorn. James, I'm delighted to have two mums and two older sisters, bounced between the adults, seeking attention and affection, always received with open arms. One Sunday evening, after a particularly pleasant day at the park, Michael stood on Sarah's porch, gazing at the stars. The kids were supposedly in bed, though he doubted they were actually sleeping. He could hear muffled giggles from the twins' room, where James had insisted on sleeping just for tonight. "What are you thinking about?" Emily asked, joining him with 2 glasses of wine. "How unpredictable life is," he replied, taking 1 glass. "If someone had told me a year ago we'd be here, you would have laughed," Emily said, smiling. "For sure." Sarah appeared at the door, holding her own glass. The kids finally quieted down. I think Clara was telling James ghost stories. "He's going to have nightmares," Emily sighed, though not really worried. "Sophia will make sure he sleeps fine," Sarah assured. "She always looks out for everyone." The 3 adults fell silent for a moment, contemplating the night sky. "Do you believe in destiny?" Sarah asked suddenly. "I didn't before," Emily answered. Now, I think I have to reconsider. Michael was about to speak when he heard light footsteps behind them. Clara, in pajamas, her hair messy, appeared on the porch. I couldn't sleep, she explained, though no one had asked. Come here, Michael said, opening his arms. Clara nestled against him, small and warm in his embrace. For a few minutes, they all just appreciated the night together. Daddy? Clara finally asked, tilting her head to look into his eyes. Yes, Princess. Will you always be around? The question, asked with the direct honesty typical of the little girl, struck Michael deeply. In it was the echo of a past abandonment, the absence that marked her early years. Michael cupped his daughter's face gently, meeting those eyes so much like his own. Forever, he replied, voice firm with the conviction of a promise. I'll always be here for you, for Sophia, for James, always. Emily stepped closer, resting her hand on Michael's. All of us will, she added, exchanging a significant look with Sarah. We're a family now. Clara smiled, satisfied by the answer, and tucked her head back against her father's chest. The silence that followed was filled with meaning, promises made and kept, old wounds finally healing, and a future that, while unconventional, was brimming with possibilities. Michael looked at Emily, then at Sarah, and finally at the small child dozing off in his arms. The path that led here had been long and winding, marked by mistakes and redemption. But now, at last, he felt whole. Not because everything was perfect or all problems were solved, but because he finally understood a fundamental truth about love. It knows no barriers, no conventional definitions, no hesitation when faced with hardship. Love simply grows, adapts, and strengthens. And the family they had built together, this unlikely, imperfect, absolutely essential family, grew stronger with each passing day.